Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com. Last week I was in Antigua. I kept it quiet because I covered about social media and household insurance on an earlier show, and I did not want to risk the misfortune of being burgled and not having any insurance because I plastered my holiday all over the internet. At least I remembered that. A few weeks ago when we were talking about skin cancer and suntan lotion, I was advised by a guest to be careful about the sun reflecting off sand and getting sunburned that way. Completely forgot. Got very burnt shins. Really uncomfortable. The last 2 days of my holiday spent in an air-conditioned room because my legs couldn't take the heat. So there are some valuable things on my show. You do need to listen to everything and you do need to pay attention, and I've just proved what happens if you don't. Well, my guest this week is Dan Lennon. He's the director of Missouri Division of Tourism. We're going to be talking about Missouri. That's coming up in a short while. But first of all, we're going to talk about my favourite thing, which is food. And it turns out that Americans don't like cash-only restaurants, communal tables, and many other things as well. Zagat has revealed in the latest survey what's hot and what's not when it comes to dining out. And what is called the National Dining Trend Survey, and it shows just how influential social media can be when it comes to dining out. People share their food, pictures of their food, which is what I was doing while I was away. Well, I wasn't. I was taking pictures to share once I've come back. So they're going to be all over the social media over the next few days. But anyway, back to the survey. 60% of avid diners across the United States say they browse food photos on social media. And among them, 75% say they have picked a place to eat based on these photos alone. The survey also uncovers the habits and preferences of nearly 10,000 United States restaurant goers, and it highlights 26 cities. I'm going to be running through the report now, and at the end I will give you a web address so you can actually read the report for yourself, and it's got some pretty pictures as well. Pretty pictures don't work too well when it comes to a radio show. Almost half of those questioned, 44%, said they take food photos when dining out to share on social media, with the most likely food photographers coming from Charleston and San Diego, both with 53%. And following up is Austin, Miami and Orlando, all with 51%. The survey says 19% said they have just picked the place to eat so they can take food photos. Once they're in the restaurant, diners are so focused on getting the perfect shot that 60% admit in stopping their dining companions from eating until they got the perfect shot. 50% say they've taken photos of every dish, and I nearly did that when I was away, and 5% have even asked for another table if they can photograph their dish. Never done that. I have to bear that in mind. This doesn't come without consequence though, as 8% of those who take photos to share on social media say they've even dropped their phone in the meal when trying to take the perfect shot. Now I've nearly done that. The survey found that 41% of diners said they like to post to social media at the table. 34% say they post later at the night or from the comfort of their bed. 14% say they do it on the way home. And 10% save them for what's called hashtag TBT, which I have to admit I had to Google. And apparently it stands for Throwback Thursday on Instagram. And 1% admit slipping into the restroom during the meal to upload the shots. Foodie photographers in Detroit and San Antonio, both at 58%, are the most likely to post photos at the table. So what's been showing up on social media? Well, the surveys found that trendy foods include avocado toast, which according to 33% of respondents say they love it, which is up from 24% last year. I actually had avocado toast at Gatwick on the way to Antigua. Have I mentioned I've been to Antigua? We normally have a ritual when it comes to a breakfast on a flight. The ritual was smashed to smithereens because the restaurants are no longer there. Found another one, avocado toast. Really nice. Anyway, other trendy foods are ramen, 31%, which is up from 26%. Pork belly at 31%. Honolulu diners have the biggest fans of ramen. 53% say they love it. While Angelinos are having a moment with avocado toast of 41%. If you're into quinoa, then you join 34% of those who dine in Orlando, and only 28% of the United States actually like quinoa. And a quarter of New York respondents say they love cauliflower rice. Not tried it. You have to give it a go. The survey says other trendy foods are so yesterday. Food mashups, cronut, ramen burger are on the way out. And because 38% of diners naturally say they're over it. And those most fed up with the mashup trend are people in Seattle with 50%. The top pet peeve, or dining deal breakers, they put it in the report, that would stop people from dining at a particular restaurant is a cash-only policy, 38%, followed closely by communal tables, I must admit, not a fan. No substitution policy, 33% for that and the communal tables. And being a vegan as I am, which I may have mentioned once or twice over the last few years, substitution is very important. A reservation-only policy puts off 20%. No reservation policy puts off 19%. No photos allowed, 13%. And none of the above, 25%. Those in Portland, amongst the highest proportion of the United States, 79%, are really into farm-to-table dining, which is becoming a much-loved restaurant practice. Again, being a vegan, very difficult to experience that. When it comes to mixology, respondents who enjoy having fresh juices in cocktails, 63%. But the jury is still out on fancy icing cocktails, whatever that is. 25% say they love it, 25% say they're over it. The other half don't mind or don't have an opinion on it. And to sum this up really, ask whether they would ever pay the restaurant bill with a mobile phone app. 66% of diners says yes, I've done it or I would, and 34% say no. This is 51% and 41% last year, so paying by phone app is becoming more popular. And some even ask if they can charge their phone, with 41% of diners saying, yes, I've charged my phone at the table. I've not done that. But you might be surprised that the New Yorkers are the most likely to ask for that facility. Summing up the report, 77% of respondents consider themselves to be foodies, and 41% say they are secretly foodies but hate the term, while the other 30% say, yes, I wear my fork on my sleeve. But if you want to read the survey in full and to see the pretty pictures I mentioned earlier, go to tinyurl.com/, this is all lowercase, JYRL6Q7, but that link will be put at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show, where you can also post your comments about what you feel about restaurants, what puts you off. And if you're one of these social media people like what I is, and you're always sharing what you're eating. You're listening to The Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com. Later on in the show, I'll be discussing the new Google app, which really could mean the beginning of the end of using people to plan and book your travel, because it looks like Google are going to be doing that all for you in the near future. But anyway, you can find out about that later on. But first, Missouri. Missouri are keen to have more people from the UK visit the state, and last week they came over to the UK to meet with travel people, agents, tour operators, bloggers, to discuss what the state can offer. Unfortunately, I couldn't make that because, I was all right. I was in Antigua. So I had a conversation with Dan Lennon over the phone today, actually, and the sound does get a little bit ropey every now and again, but do bear with it because there is some really interesting information. And it does sound, it's not a state I've thought about visiting before, but now I've spoken to Dan, it's definitely up there because it does sound a lot of fun, especially when it comes to music, which I love, and drinking, which I also love. But anyway, more about the drinking and the music later. But first of all, for all of you who's not sure where Missouri is, the first thing Dan told us was how we could find it on the map.
Missouri is located pretty much in the center of America. In fact, I think the geographical center is in Independence, Missouri, and which means it's about 5 hours southwest of Chicago, and pretty much equidistant from the coast areas.
So, how did Missouri get its name?
Missouri was of course, like most of the U.S., was Native American land, and it comes from Indian words meaning wooden canoe people or those of the big canoe, because there's the Missouri River and also the Mississippi River that are a big part of our state. So it came from the Sioux Indians that lived here.
Okay, so why is it known as the Show Me State?
Well, it has been known as the Show Me State, and this kind of goes back to maybe a characteristic of our people. I think it actually came from the late 1800s, that people in the state were people that you need to show stuff to. They weren't easily gullible. They had a real sense of sort of skepticism and doubt, and and common sense. And so it kind of speaks to the level-headedness and maybe the hard-headedness of the people that originally populated Missouri. We laugh about the fact that the Show Me State maybe doesn't sometimes sound so hospitable, and maybe it does reflect something a little bit about our folks, but it is quite hospitable, and we'd love to have people come and visit. One thing that's quite noted about people in the Midwest, and particularly in Missouri, is how gracious and welcoming and friendly they are, and particularly interested in international visitors.
Okay, so how do we get there from the UK?
Okay, there's good connecting service to St. Louis and Kansas City. Most people fly into Chicago from UK and then go to St. Louis or Kansas City. And then on American United, there's also service into Springfield, Missouri, which is down in the southern part of the state as well. So one way to, however, at the present time, we don't have direct service, but a lot of folks, because of Route 66, which I know your listeners are familiar with, which goes from Chicago all the way across the country out to California. It comes through our state at St. Louis. So a lot of folks will fly into Chicago, and then they'll drive along Route 66 down into Missouri.
Before we get on to Route 66, I understand there's going to be a solar eclipse next year. When in the year is it, and where would be the best place to visit see it from your state?
Well, there's a lot of good places to visit it. It's going to move kind of in the southeasterly direction from the top of the state out in Kansas City area, in particular St. Joseph, which is north of Kansas City, will be for 2 minutes and 38 seconds a complete total eclipse there. It'll move across the state. A good place would be Columbia, which is in the center of the state. That's where I live. 2 minutes and 36 seconds there, and then come out kind of in the the St. Louis area on the east of the state, and most directly over Hillsborough and DeSoto, where it'll also be about 2 minutes and 39 seconds of total eclipse. All those, particularly Kansas City, St. Louis, and St. Joe, there's lots and lots of things here that you could do.